Good evening. Yes, we said you're going to consider the issue of masculinity for a time, and today I'm looking at it from the point of suicide notes or suicide net letters. So, it, there are very few studies on suicide. There are very few studies on suicide notes and letters, and in a sense, it feels like some sort of pornography of the mind. Should you study somebody's last messages to their grave? And suicide notes are usually for people who were successful in the act. Suicide is the intentional act of taking one's life, precipitated by a combination of biological, social-cultural, interpersonal, and psychological factors. So, intentional act of taking one's life. Lately, there have been many debates about whether it's moral or not, whether somebody gets to choose whether they can take their own lives or not and stuff. Uh, my morality is Christian and biblical, so I will take a side on this. In the Christian worldview, it's only God who gives life, and it's only Him who has the prerogative to take life. Okay? So I think suicide is wrong. That said, I have been to a point where I questioned whether life is meaningful. I think suicide is primarily a question of, is life worth living? Is life worth going on? And that's a difficult question. It's similar to the question, does life have meaning? Is there any meaning inherent to life? And there are many books written on that, chief of which is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And if you've not studied the book, I think you should. It's a good book. So hopefully you're going to hear me with my disability in my voice. So the mean age for suicide, the study I'm going to use is from Singapore. It's called Suicide Letters in Singapore. It's rather, should I say, outdated. It's from this century, but towards the turn of the century, 2000 to 2004. It was a study by Bon Hock Chia, I don't know how to pronounce these names, Audrey Chia and B. Cho Tai. I think these are people from that nation. So the mean age for suicide at that time was the age of 40.8 for those people who wrote letters, and those who did not write letters was 48.9. So the explanation given for this was those who committed suicide towards the later stages of their lives, they did that majorly when they had lost their partner. So they did not have a reason to write a suicide note. The people who are likely to write suicidal notes were people who are female, young, and single, and also illiterate. So men also wrote suicide notes, and I think that's what you're going to study now to consider. This is not an academic treatise. This is just, if anything, it's just an introduction to this. I don't think I'll do a video on this later, but maybe I could, maybe I should, maybe not. This is not something to dissuade someone from suicide. I'm not intent on that. I'm only intent on seeing the reasons why men, or just human beings generally, commit suicide. So the mean age is 40. So this is a study from the 2000, the early 2000s. So maybe that has changed now, but I think it changes the focus. We usually told that the younger males are the ones who are likely to do this, but we see that it's actually the adults or the middle age, 40 to about 50. Okay. Again, in pathology, they usually say the men who are at highest risk of malnutrition are men who in their 40s to 50 who are unmarried. So maybe getting married is a good thing for men. So suicide letters, I read this from the study. It is a meta study. It is a study from many other studies. So it's maybe that's a point of weakness or a point of strength, depending on how you choose to see it. So I'm useless, stupid, hopeless, a bastard, a disgrace, and a failure. I think these are things which are usually written by younger men and even women when they are on the edge. So I wanted to look at it from the point of what are the things which give men a sense of integration or a sense of mastery. And from the book we inferred to before, we said that masculinity primarily is a function of strength, mastery, honor, and courage. So a man literally from a certain book say that a man is a master of the universe or a master of their world or a master of their domain. The world, according to the book King, Warrior, Magician, and Lover, is that which a man is directly in charge of. And anything else which is beyond that is the non-world. So for me, as a student, my world is my books and maybe my relationship with my parents, girlfriends, boys, and other people. So that's my world. Non-world is things which are not particularly of immediate concern to me. Okay, so the reasons for suicide in the young people between 14 and 20, I think. No, between 14 and 24, it was majorly school and relationship problems. So school, when students could not meet their own expectations or their parental expectations, or there was some sort of bullying or something like that. So majorly school and standards. So when there was an apparent standard difference between what you could be and what you are, those who wrote the letters were majorly likely to fall into that category. Then also we have examinations and failure. So I think failure is a big thing. I think I've been there. I've been to a place where I questioned whether not checking out of life would be easier, because I think it's an immediate way to end suffering, which I think it's a moral question. Everybody comes to that point once in a while, whether you're like, should I not? And being medical students, they're very efficient ways of ending one's life without much pain. So I think there are always all these options. Then for adults, people between now 25 to 50, it was majorly financial matters and marital problems. So if somebody was, and jobs and employment actually played their part, but not in the same degree as financial and marital issues did. So if somebody was married to someone, then the person cheated on them, they're likely to end their lives. And if somebody had like issues with their kids and stuff like that, it should be a prodrome of sorts. Financial issues, I think this is obvious. When you can't provide for your family or for yourself, I think it's difficult. And this is from Singapore. So Singapore is majorly Chinese, I think. Then for the elderly, those who are above 60, it was majorly physical illness. So there's a disease for this nerve. I think I don't remember the name, some neuralgia for a nerve which passes here. I think the nickname for that nerve is the suicide nerve, because people who have that pain, or a pain of a neural nerve is a neuralgia. So people with that pain were likely to have to commit suicide because it was overly painful. So for older people, physical illness was a tendency. The first time AIDS came to Kenya, HIV and AIDS, whenever people learned that they had HIV and AIDS, they would jump off the hospital windows and die. So maybe this was part of stigma, but it shows that in the face of the void, many people are likely to take the other route, maybe the easier route. Then again, back to the reasons of suicide. For young people, school and relationships, there are other issues, yes. Then adults, financial issues and marital problems. Then for the elderly, majorly it was physical illness. So it was not even loneliness that was surprising. Yeah. Then negative emotions, which were likely to indicate that somebody would commit suicide, or despondency or agony. These are, you feel miserable, you feel dejected and stuff. So despondency and agony. Then number two, it was emptiness. Despondency and agony was about 65%. Then all these others were, emptiness was about, I don't remember, 20% or 14%. So despondency and agony are the major here. And it should be noted that these things could be, despondency and emptiness could be in the same suicide note. Okay. And also, only about 23% of the people who committed suicide then wrote letters. So not everybody writes letters. So again, we cannot know about those who did not write them, but we know about those who wrote the letters. So despondency, agony, 1, emptiness, 2. Again, back to the book by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. Emptiness is basically the predominant feeling of the age, according to Rollo May from the book Man's Search for Himself, which I think you can study. Then we have guilt and shame. I think this is obvious. Think of somebody who gambled their entire household income and they can't go back home or something like that. Then we have hopelessness. Hopelessness is the same as sort of like emptiness, but the inability to hope. And then lastly, anger. If you're angry at yourself or at someone, then some people would come to the end of the road. But it was majorly a combination of all these factors. So you've said among the young, school relationships, adults, financial, marital problems, elderly, physical illness, the negative emotions, despondency, agony, emptiness, guilt and shame, hopelessness, and anger. But they're majorly a combination of all this. So yeah, again, back to the statement. I'm useless, I'm stupid, I'm hopeless, I'm a bastard, I'm a disgrace, I'm a failure. I think I identified some of this, at least at the point where I was considering whether life is worth living or not. So for men, again, I would say that masculinity majorly means order. So when you feel that life is largely disordered and perhaps beyond your own ordering, then many men do not see a reason for living. Also, studies showed that a very small percentage of people who committed suicide had a religious bent. So maybe having a religious bent could be views. Of course, there are cults which lead people to mass suicides. A cult is following someone unquestionably and questionably, where you take orders from people without any question, without any prior assumptions to disprove or to prove. Okay. So the limitations of this study is that, again, I think for me it's sort of dated. We are going to look for more studies into this. And then number two, my own limitations. Suicide is majorly taboo in Africa or in my community. So I did not jump into these subjects as readily as I would of others. That's why it's evening and I've not done a video yet. But I'll study into this more and we'll see what to do. So as it pertains to masculinity, masculinity again is about, as expressed in the statement in another book rather of Men and Suicide, it's about being a master of the universe or a master of the world. So when somebody is not a master of their world, then it's very likely that they could jump over. Another study, people usually say that the end of depression is suicide, but again, from these studies, the people who wrote suicide letters were rarely repressed or were rarely having any mental illnesses before or were rarely using drugs. So those reasons we usually have about suicide and the theories we have might be false. Okay. People actually wrote suicide notes tended to go for more lethal ways of suicide, like hanging, poisoning, and charcoal burners, that is using carbon monoxide. Yeah, compared to people who are mentally ill who would jump over places and stuff like that. So I think that's all for now. Again, maybe I should have done more justice to this, but that's primary.